Thank you for joining us on this Memorial Day weekend. This day we recall a Memorial Day, not those who are currently serving and not our veterans. We recall those who did not come home, and we recall their families, the Gold Star families, who on this day recall their loved ones. So we ask your blessing again, and at this time I'm going to ask the gentleman to post the flag. I'd like to share with you a few words from Scripture and a few words from a general of the Marine Corps. The Scripture lesson for this day, the Holy Gospel according to St. John, the 15th chapter, verse 13. Greater love hath no man, has no one than this, that he lay down his life from his friends. This day there are tens, hundreds of thousands of men and women interred in our land who have fought for our country and given their lives. And with that large a number, oftentimes they are nameless people, just folks that we know we owe a great debt of gratitude, but we don't know them. I'm going to share with you the story of three individuals this day and the medal, what they had to give both for their comrades and for their country. This is a speech given by General John Kelly, a 4-star Marine Corps general. He gave this in St. Louis years ago, and he told the story of two young Marines who were in Iraq. This is his story. When I was commander of all U.S. and Iraqi forces on April 22nd, 2008, two Marine infantry battalions, 1-9, known as the Walking Dead, and 2-8 were switching out in Ramadi. One battalion was in its closing days of the deployment, the other just starting its 7-month combat tour. Two Marines, Corporal Jonathan Yale and Lance Corporal Jordan Harder, 22 and 30 respectively, one from each battalion, were assuming the watch at the entrance gate of an outpost that contained a makeshift barracks housing 50 Marines. The same ramshackle building was also home to 100 Iraqi police, our allies in the fight against terrorists in Ramadi, at that time known as the most dangerous city on earth and owned by Al-Qaeda. Yale was a dirt-poor, mixed-race kid from Virginia with a wife, a mother, and a sister, all who lived with him and he supported. He did this on a yearly salary of less than $23,000. Harder, on the other hand, was a middle-class white kid from Long Island. They were from two completely different worlds. Had they not joined the Marines, they would never have met each other or understood that multiple Americas exist simultaneously, depending upon one's race, ethnicity, religious affiliation, education level, economic status, or where you might have been born. But they were Marines, combat Marines, forged in the same crucible, and because of that bond, they were brothers, as close, if not closer, than if they were born of the same woman. The mission orders they received from their sergeant squad leader, I'm sure, went something like this. All right, take charge of this post and let no unauthorized personnel or vehicles pass. You clear? I'm sure also Yale and Harder rolled their eyes with just enough attitude that made the point without saying out loud, no kidding, sweetheart. We know what we're doing. They then relieved 2 other Marines on watch and took up their post at the entry control point of Joint Security Station Nasser in the Sophia section of Al-Ramadi, Al-Anbar, Iraq. A few minutes later, a large blue truck turned down the alleyway, perhaps 60 to 70 yards in length, and sped its way through the serpentine concrete Jersey walls. The truck stopped just short of where the 2 men were posted and detonated, killing them both. 24 masonry houses were damaged or destroyed. A mosque 100 yards away collapsed. The truck's engine came to rest 200 yards away, knocking down most of a house before it stopped. Our explosive experts reckon the blast was caused by 2,000 pounds of explosives. Because these 2 young infantrymen didn't have it in their DNA to run from danger, they saved 150 of their Iraqi and American brothers in arms. When I read the report a few hours after it happened, I called the regimental commander for more details. Something about this struck me as different. We expect Marines, regardless of rank or MOS, to stand their ground and do their duty, and even die in the process, if that's what the mission takes. But this just seemed different. The regimental commander agreed, and had just returned from the site, but reported that there were no American witnesses to the event, just Iraqi police. If there was any chance of finding out exactly what happened, I'd have to do it, because a combat award requires 2 witnesses, and we figured the bureaucrats back in Washington would never buy Iraqi statements. If it had any chance at all, it had to come under the signature of a general officer to give them an award. I traveled to Ramadi the next day and spoke individually to a half a dozen Iraqi police, all of whom told the same story. They all said, we knew immediately what was going on when the Marines began firing. The Iraqi police reported that some of them also fired, and then, to a man, ran for safety just prior to the explosion. All survived. Many were injured, some seriously. Many of the Iraqis elaborated, and with tears welling up in their eyes, they'd run like any normal man to save his life. What he didn't know then, and what he learned that very instant, was that Marines are not normal. Choking past the emotion, he said, "Sir, in the name of God, no sane man would have stood there and done what they did. They saved us all." What we didn't know at the time, and I only learned after I submitted them both, Yale and Harder, for posthumous Navy crosses, was that one of our security cameras recorded some of the attack. It happened exactly as the Iraqis described it. It took exactly 6 seconds from when the truck entered the alley until it detonated. You can watch the last 6 seconds of their young lives. I suppose it took about a second or two for the 2 Marines to separately come to the same conclusion about what was going on once the truck came into their view at the far end of the alley. No time to talk it over or call the sergeant for what they should do. Only enough time to take half an instant and think about what the sergeant told them to do only a few moments before. Let no unauthorized personnel or vehicles pass. It took maybe another 2 seconds for them to present their weapons, take aim, and open up. By this time, the truck was halfway through the barriers and gaining speed. Here the recording shows a number of Iraqi police, some who had fired their AKs, now scattering like the normal and rational men they were, some running right past the Marines who had 3 seconds left to live. For about 2 seconds more, the recording shows the Marines firing their weapons non-stop. The truck's windshield explodes into shards of glass as their rounds take it apart and tear into the body of this the man trying to get past them to kill their brothers, American and Iraqi, bedded down in the barracks, totally unaware that their lives at that moment depended entirely on two Marines standing their ground. Yale and Harter never hesitated. By all reports and by the recording, they never stepped back. They never even shifted their weight. With their feet spread shoulder width apart, they leaned into the danger, firing as fast as they could. They had only 1 second left to live. And I think they knew. The truck explodes, the camera goes blank. Two young men go to their God. 6 seconds. Not enough time to think about their families, their country, their flag, their lives or their deaths, but more than enough time for two very brave young men to do their duty. Those are the kind of people who are on watch all over the world tonight for you. And as amazing as this selfless act of sacrifice may seem, it is the norm. That's the story of two young Marines. There's a third story that was woven in this story that you didn't even hear. General Kelly, a 4-star Marine, gave this speech 4 days after his son was killed in combat, also a Marine. And he instructed his aides not to tell anyone of what had happened. It had not been made public information as of yet. It was his duty and his honor to tell about these two Marines. His son's story would be told later. But as he told the story, he carried the weight and the pain of a Gold Star father. And he now knows that weight and that pain. In a few moments, I'm going to read the names of about 30 individuals who have given their lives over this past year. We don't know their stories, but we do know that their families this day remember and cry and pray and remember. They don't do that alone. We do that with them. And now a roll call of the individuals we have lost this past year. Air Force Staff Sergeant Peter W. Taub. Air Force Major Andriana Vonderbruggen. Army Private Christopher Castaneda. Air Force Major Master Sergeant Gregory T. Kusi. Air Force Major Phyllis Pelkey. Air Force Captain Jonathan Golden. Air Force Staff Sergeant Ryan Hammond. Air Force Senior Airman Quinn Johnson Harris. Air Force Technical Sergeant Joseph G. Lim. Air Force Staff Sergeant Michael Cinco. Air Force Staff Sergeant Lois M. Bonacasa. Army Staff Sergeant Matthew McClintock. Sergeant Joseph F. Stifler. Major John D. Jerry. Staff Sergeant Louis F. Carden. Airman First Class Nathaniel McDavitt. Special Warfare Operator First Class Charles H. Keating IV. First Lieutenant David Bauders.